Take one. Thank you.
Michael Douglas, thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you for listening to me.
This is really a special visit. It's not a given that you would come here in these times.
Well, probably not. This is a difficult time. I was fortunate enough, dear friends of mine, Heather Reisman and Jerry Schwartz, two Canadians, who were very, very much involved with Israel and invited me.
And when they called you, you said yes with no hesitation?
Oh, absolutely. So what a rare opportunity to get over here at this particular time.
It's a time of war. We know it's controversial. You might get backlashed for being here, for supporting Israel. No hesitation at all?
No, not at this point. I guess, right after the tragedy, the massacre on the 7th, I, like a lot of people, was just shocked. I think we got used to thinking of Israel as being omnipotent. It was one of those moments as a Jew, part of the diaspora, along with in Israel, we just were taken back by feeling vulnerable. And I don't think it was a sense that Israel had felt for a long time.
So you also felt vulnerable, although you were in the States, or you just looked at the country and said they're vulnerable?
Well, I felt vulnerable for Israel.
But you were very quick in taking actions, right? A week afterwards, you were already signing a petition to get the hostages back, and from then you've been very, very supportive on your social media.
Why not? I mean, there
I can
is.
tell you why. In Hollywood, it wasn't such a clear case. I mean, in the beginning, it was easier, but just after a week or so, there was also a letter sent to Biden by other actors, and it started being kind of controversial even in Hollywood.
Yeah, a little bit. There were and there are, but I don't know what to say. It was my personal feelings, and really didn't know until recently how to kind of articulate or how to support.
But you knew you wanted to come to Israel?
But I had the opportunity, absolutely.
We're meeting here after some very intense days. You went down to the Nova in Be'eri with Liraz Ben Ami, whose parents were kidnapped.
Yes.
Her mother is back, her father is still there.
Yeah.
And you can see that they take her on a car. Here is the car that are waiting for her.
What shocked you the most from that day in the South?
The randomness as you went from one house to the others, how some were untouched. The questions about how much they really knew, how the choices were made on the houses, the kind of destruction, what happened to the safe rooms, those who were able to stay safe and those who were not. This whole concept of not being able to lock your safe rooms. And then the people that survived that are still living there.
That surprised you?
Yeah, well, they're in their attitude and in their ability to talk about what happened. I think this is the biggest moment since Israel's battle to create itself as a country in 47, 48.
And you felt that it's Israel's second independence?
I sort of just seeing from the military side, from the civilian side. I've been talking to my family a lot about it, and it's rough. My heart goes out.
You also met Omer Shem Tov's mother, and you've met Mirav Leshem Gonen, who's Romi's mother.
Right, and 3 other families we met together, which was sober, to say the least. One of the families already knows that their son has been, I assume, murdered. They want their son's body back before they can have a shiva, before they can acknowledge that.
I understand that in the room there were a lot of emotions.
Yeah, it was very emotional. They talked in detail about the actual day of October 7th and the loss of them, and they now have a fair amount of video. And then not to know anything for 8 months is hard to imagine. It's just really hard to understand the viciousness involved with this. The fact that these hostages have not had the support of the Red Cross. I'm a little upset that the Red Cross is not taking a stronger position. I am a United Nations ambassador for 20 years. I was disappointed initially in the United Nations perspective on this in terms of these hostages and how they're being treated.
I want to take you back to Hollywood's reaction. Jerry Seinfeld said that, he got backlashed for visiting here, for supporting. I talked to Julia Margolis, who was very active for the hostages, and she said she feels different when she walks around on the streets and among Hollywood industry. Is it something that you feel also?
No, because at my point in my career, I'm going to be 80 this year, so I'm sort of a Teflon man. It's not really going to make a big difference,
But would you have thought about it differently if you were just starting your career? Do you think that young Jewish actors now have to think, well, wearing my Jewish identity and being so strongly supportive of Israel is something that could affect their career?
Probably, probably would be the pressure on a lot of people. But I just posted from here, from the Nova thing, and my comments are pretty rough. And a lot of people, what do they call? They disown you.
Unfollow you.
Unfollow me. So you get a fair amount of that. But that's par for the course. But it's also the universities and everything. My kids, is in the middle of. They are heartbroken friendships. People that were friends their entire lives now. It's like a civil war. All of a sudden you look at them across the divide. This is the Palestinian movement. The attacks on the Hillel across the different campuses. And it got very aggressive. Are there people now who would rather hide their Star of David? Absolutely.
Your kids felt it on campus?
Oh, for sure.
They have had friendships that were torn away because of this since October 7th?
Over this issue.
Wow.
And so now you look at this friend, and I remember my mother is Protestant. My father is a Jew. So when I grew up, I was not considered a Jew. Right, because it was only 1973 where the Reform movement gave me an ability to be able to be part of the tribe. And I remember being in school and with one of my best friends one day, and all of a sudden the conversation came up, and he looked at me and said, "Come on, Michael, all Jews, they cheat in business." I said, "What?" He said, Jews, they cheat in business. We all know that. Wow, and I looked at my friend, I was really close to him, and, it was just like miles away. And as we looked at each other, we realized we were just going to drift apart. So for my kids, I understood that. I understood how my daughter, how badly she felt, that she just was so hurt, and to realize this. So there does seem to be this deep-seated anti-Semitism, which its roots have begun back up. It's come above ground now, and it's beginning to grow like a vine. You
must have been very devastated to the fact that you had to encounter that when you were in high school, and so many years later you hear it from your daughter and your son.
Yes, it's a wake-up call. It was a big wake-up call.
Wake-up call in what sense?
It's the spread or the revival of anti-Semitism, the permission. Part of this, I think, comes about through autocratic rule. We seem to have to remind ourselves that democracy is an endangered species. One of the reasons that we so strongly support Israel is you're the only democracy in the Middle East.
You also talked about the fact that it's important for you to tell the people that you met here that there is a big support of the U.S.
I think they know that, but yes, the U.S. has been a tremendous supporter of Israel. But also good friends have the right to criticize. And I think that's the part that's been a little, I wouldn't say offensive, but to say it's not a one-way street. We can, certainly if there are issues, just as Israelis might want to deal with politics, there are statements and comments that are being made that may not be accepted.
Recently you said, "I feel more of a spiritual, religious connection to Judaism than I ever had before." You said that in April. I was wondering if it has anything to do with October 7th.
Yes, absolutely. This certainly defines, sure, I'm a Jew.
But it was quite a journey for you, right? Because as you said in the beginning, you were like kind of disqualified. Why would you want to belong to a tribe you thought disqualifies you?
Because my father was, because I went to my cousin's bar mitzvahs over the years.
And all those years you felt that you really didn't belong?
Well, they told me. It was told me, your mother's not Jewish, you're not a Jew. They say it politely. They told me nicely, no, you're not a Jew because your mother's not Jewish.
Because actually, it's not Douglas, right? It's
Danilovich, yeah.
That was your father's name.
Correct.
Kirk Douglas, of course, and then he changed it.
He changed it as an actor, yeah.
Your father actually reconnected to his Judaism very late in his life, right?
He did. After a helicopter crash, the student pilot and his instructor were killed instantly. The rotor still kept going, the gasoline kept coming out, and it didn't catch fire.
He was 83, I think, at the time.
Yeah, he was like literally, I remember he was black and blue on his entire body, but he didn't break a bone. And I think he wondered, why am I alive and this 19-year-old kid is dead? So he started studying the Old Testament with a rabbi, and it's totally changed him as a human being, I think.
It infected you also, right?
Well, yes, because at 83, he had his second bar mitzvah, and became part of his life.
And also, it was your son who really, he wanted a bar mitzvah.
He wanted, I mean, it was totally out of left field, and I think it was the influence of his grandfather. And he wanted a bar mitzvah, and he studied, his piece was quite long, quite difficult, and he did just a great job, and we were so proud of him, and I think it played a big part in grounding him in his solace. And then Karis, my daughter, has had a bat mitzvah.
And your home, your wife, Catherine Zeta-Jones, is not Jewish, and so you celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas together, or how does it go?
We celebrate Hanukkah and Christmas together. We have Seder dinners every Shabbat, but we do. I mean, Catherine is very proud of the kids, and so are her Welsh grandparents. Are very proud.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
You're going to turn 80 in September?
Yeah.
Do you take time to look back now, or are you?
I probably should look back a little more than I do, but I don't generally look at my movies after I make them. I may see them at the premiere and catch them once in a while if they're on television or something.
And then when you see them on TV, you say, I was good?
Most of the time, I have a pretty good, I would say, we in the States, we're talking about a good batting average. I think, there's some turkeys in there for sure, but you try to do the best you can.
But are you thinking in terms of legacy?
My legacy's a good batting average, and that's, I'm happy. I look back and say, yeah, there's, when people stop me, they've always got one film or another, and so, I'm happy.
So when are we going to see you back in Israel?
I haven't left yet. We'll be back. We'll be back. My kids love it here. We'll be back soon.
So, Michael Douglas, thank you so much for taking the time and coming here in these troubling times that we are, and thank you for making the effort, and thank you for this interview.
Well, my pleasure. Wishing everybody the best, and shalom.
Shalom.
Shalom.